Hello everyone, welcome to our next video on Sir Philip Sidney. Come, let's go and see what are all the new information we can gather regarding Philip Sidney, model of an Elizabethan courtier and gentleman. So, Sir Philip Sidney was the model of an Elizabethan courtier and gentleman. So, when we know about Sir Philip Sidney, we could imagine how an Elizabethan courtier or gentleman would be. To some extent, we could imagine. Then Stephen Gozen dedicated his school of abuse to Sir Philip Sidney. He wrote bad about poetry. So in return, Sir Philip Sidney wrote Apology for Poetry. So Gozen had indicated poetry on four counts. So the first one is it is the mother of lies. So poetry is the mother of lies. And then it is the nurse of abuse. The third one is that a man could employ more useful than poetry. That is, if a person is writing poetry, it is only a waste of time. So he can utilize his time in something useful way. So that is what he's saying. And then he says, Plato had an idea for ideal commonwealth. So Sidney, he had taken the models from the ancient classics and the Italian writers of the Renaissance like Homer, Plato, Aristotle among the Greeks, Horace, Virgil, and Ovid among the Romans, Minturno and Scaliger among the Italians. There was no criticism in England during his period. So this is an important point. So during the age in which Sir Philip Sidney lived, we couldn't find any criticism prevailing in England. So on that period, only drama was blossoming. Okay. Then Sir Philip Sidney, he kept the poetry as superior. So he considered that it is superior than all the other things. But Gozen says that poetry is a lie and poet is a liar. So we could find the contradictions in the opinions of Stephen Gozen and Sir Philip Sidney. Okay, he says that it is the oldest of all branches of learning. He says science gives moral values, history tells about universality, the elegy tells about the feelings which we have for something or somebody which is lost, and the satire is to ridicule a folly, the comedy is about the common errors of life, tragedy is about the uncertainty of the world, lyric is the sweet price, and the epic repeats that it represents the truth in the loftiest manner, that is in noble way. Philip Sidney says that poetry impress the readers at a time. So he says if the person has ink and paper, he can write poetry. This is the opinion of Sir Philip Sidney. So if a person has pen and paper with him, he can write poetry. He says it has a profitable purpose. But Gozen says that it is a lie. Sidney says it is not poetry that abuses man's wit, but man's wit alone abuses the poetry. There can be poetry without sinful tone. So the nature of the thing is determined not by its misuse, but by its right use. Only based on its right use, we can determine the nature of the thing, whether it is good or bad. So only based on the right use. So Gozen says that epic also misrepresent the gods. Epic also misrepresent the gods. Sidney's Apology, it was the first serious attempt to apply the classical rules to English poetry. So he wanted poetry to be in England, and it is to ancient Greece and Rome. So in former he says poet as a heavenly maker, and later he says as prophet, or they are gifted with some kind of foreknowledge of all the other things. And then the English people, that is Englishmen, should follow the moral. He also admired the great writers of Renaissance of Italy like Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio. Most of us have heard the names of those writers, so they are all the famous writers. For the definition of poetry, Philip Sidney follows Aristotle and Horace. because they said that it is an art of imitation. Aristotle has interpreted in Castelvetro's edition of Poetics, which was published in 1570. Aristotle has stressed only the unity of action, but Sidney followed unity of time, place, and action. He says it has given some kind of importance in the plot. It is necessary to confine a play within a single day, that is, within a single revolution of the sun. If it exceeds more than 24 hours, then it will look like something, it is an artificial one. Okay, and then Gorboduc, which he highly prizes for Senecan, the technique which Senecan had used in that work, which is in fact it has only tragedy. Okay, it has only tragedy, could not it be served as an exact of all tragedies, for it has fault in both place and time, so the two necessary companions of corporal action. So the condition of the unity of action, so the unity of action, so if a play follows the unity of action, definitely it will arouse pity and fear, and it also end with an unhappy ending. So in that period tragicomedy obtained. Okay, and then Sydney's membership of Areopagus have already been noted. He has not only the prize of unrhymed classical verse, but the more extreme view in meter. So it is not rhyming and varying that makes a poet. So if a poet has adopted different rhymes and verses in his writing, it will not make him to consider him as a poet. No more than long gown maker, an advocate. So who though the pleader in armor should be an advocate and no soldier. So poetry, according to Sir Philip Sidney, it is the art of inventing new things. Okay, so it is poetry is some kind of art of inventing new things which in better way than this word has to offer. Englishman and Elizabethan people loved rhyme or verse. So for that reason, the English ballad Chevichas. So it was the old song which was sung by Percy and Douglas. So it had moved him powerfully. So whenever he heard it, he was unable to come out of it. So he went deep inside it. So he was immersed inside that particular song. Okay, so he considered that verse as superior form of expression to ordinary prose. He says about dignity of composition that the poetry is superior than the law, so that he could talk against the poetry. And then to Aristotle, poetry was an art of imitation for the natural pleasure imitation affords, but for Sidney it is an art of imitation for a specific purpose. So for both the people, poetry is an art of imitation. But for Aristotle, it is the poetry. It is an art of imitation for pleasure. But for Sidney, it is for a specific purpose. So it imitates to teach and also to delight. That is pleasure and also to teach something. So those who practice that poetry, that kind of poetry writing, are known as makers and prophets. Okay, so they imitate both to delight and to teach. So when we read a work, we should also get pleasure, and also we should get some moral things. Okay, if it is only a pleasure giving one, then the people will not be led in a good way. So it should it should preach some kind of moral things. And then if a work which contains only the moral things, then it will be bored. So both pleasure and instruction should be there in a work. Then only it will be considered as a good work. And then it move men to take the goodness in a work. So the poets are framing the new forms, not only the art of imitation. So they are not doing the art of imitation, but they are also doing the art of invention or creation. So they are imitating the nature through the idea. So what is in the poem? They will have they will express some kind of ideas. So what type of idea they will express? So only they will imitate the nature in the form of idea. So that is what poetry according to Sir Philip Sidney. So this is the point. So we could find some kind of contradictions between Aristotle and Sir Philip Sidney. One to some extent, their opinions are same, but after some extent, we could find some type of difference between those two critics' point of view. Okay, so I hope you're all clear with Sir Philip Sidney. So thank you for your patient listening.